number 1. Tired of the ordinary at lunchtime? Why not try something smart to chew on? The Lunchroom on RCI, Monday to Friday, 12:45 to 2 p.m. The Lunchroom, informative, enlightening, provocative, engaging. The Lunchroom on RCI, food for thought. The station that gives you, more lunch.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Lunchroom on Radio Caribbean International for Thursday, August the 21st, 2025. And this is program number 1432 of the Lunchroom. I'm your host, Calix George Jr. Now, of course, in addition to 101.1 FM radio, you can also get us at our website, rcisaintlucia.com. And we are also streaming live on our Facebook feed. That is the official page of Radio Caribbean International. You just go on there and you'll get us live. And of course, you can share that with your friends and family, please. Of course, if you want to make a contribution to the program, you can do so on our live feed. But you can also call in to 452-3046. Again, 452-3046 and tell us what's on your plate today. Now, of course, you also have the option of getting us on WhatsApp. That number is 724-0008. Again, especially if you are overseas in the diaspora, on vacation overseas, you may want to call in to 724-0008. Get us on WhatsApp, or you can send in a message as well. Now, we want to send out some birthday greetings today. First to Virginia, right here in Radio Caribbean International, as part of our RCI family. And we want to send her wonderful birthday greetings. Hope she is having a wonderful, wonderful and special birthday celebration. Now, of course, we want to send birthday greetings to Mr. Curtis George over in the UK. And happy birthday to you, sir. Hope you're having a fantastic birthday celebration. And also to Miss Marilyn Bain, happy birthday to you, and wishing you wonderful blessings on your very special day. I look back in time, and a bit of history for today. Well, in the year 1772, King Gustav III of Sweden completed a coup d'etat by adopting a new constitution and installing himself as an enlightened despot, ending 50 years of parliamentary rule in Sweden. In the year 1888, on this day, an American inventor by the name of William Seward Burroughs patented what was known as an adding machine. In the year 1911, on this day, the Mona Lisa was stolen from the Louvre Museum by Italian decorator Vincenzo Perugia and was eventually recovered 2 years later. 1959, on this day, Hawaii became the 50th state of the United States of America. And on this day in 1991, conservative coup in the Soviet Union was crushed by popular resistance led by Boris Yeltsin in 3 days. We now move on to our dish of the day.
Attention shoppers, big savings are here and Quartz from August 22nd to August 26th. Quartz is giving you deals you can't miss. Buy one item, get 10% off on credit or 5% off with cash. Buy 2 items, get 20% off on credit or 10% off with cash. Buy 3 items, go big with 35% off on credit and 15% off when you pay cash. That's right, massive discounts. 4 days only. Hurry in, August 22nd to 26th. At all Quartz branches. Quartz, bringing value home.
Serving now, the Daily Dish.
And welcome back to the Lunchroom at Radio Caribbean International. Now, of course, every now and then, I guess because of parliamentary debates, we get statements being flung around, and quite often it takes a while to be able to actually pull the horse back into the stable, so to speak, on some of these issues. Now, one of them has been the matter of DSH. We started speaking about it And yes, well, that was about yesterday. Yes, yesterday afternoon, we saw her speaking about the whole matter of DSH, but not just about DSH, really the whole issue of investment, foreign direct investment, and what that potentially looks like today, and where precisely that investment is taking place. Now, quite often, when we thought of foreign direct investment in the past, the thinking was that this would be infrastructure that would be constructed usually into the private sector, making an investment into a private enterprise purely. And so, of course, back in the 1970s in St. Lucia, 16s and 70s, there was a big thrust towards trying to modernize the economy. And in fact, you could look back to the recommendations of Sir William Arthur Lewis, where he was, of course, speaking to the importance of industrialization. And something that was eventually sort of attributed to him, although he didn't really use that terminology, was the whole idea of industrialization by invitation. And that to mean that you would industrialize by inviting entities from outside, foreign players coming from other countries, to come in and to make the kind of investments into industry, and that would then lead to a process of industrialization. And of course, how that is achieved is quite often hoped through the provision of certain incentives and concessions provided to the entity that is coming in to make the investment. But remember, the critical aspect here is that within the mind of Sir William Arthur Lewis, and within the minds of how a lot of this theory of economic theory is shaped, is that there has to be an investor who is coming in usually with two critical elements. One being know-how or expertise. That individual or entity or company has some know-how or is bringing a tremendous amount of knowledge in terms of the operations of a particular enterprise or business, and that they in fact are bringing something that the country does not have by way of any skill set or expertise in terms of management of a particular entity. So, for example, and the thinking there is that if we, say for argument's sake, St. Lucia wanted to invest in an oil refinery, and we thought, well, there was some benefit in doing so, maybe because we figured it might result in lower oil prices for us at the pump or whatever, or industries being created downstream from that. But we don't have the expertise in terms of petrochemicals and chemical engineering and the systems that have to go into development of an oil refinery. You would understand, obviously, you want to get a company that has that kind of expertise or that sort of skill set to bring in. So the skill set, know-how, was one of the critical elements. The technology, for example, is one of the critical elements that should define whether or not we should be trying to encourage an investment. The other one is, when I'm within the context of know-how, I should say it sometimes also deals with how well you can actually manage, or you've had a proven record of being able to manage particular types of activities in that way. So, for example, you may have a company that owns many hotels, and they've got a chain of hotels, and so therefore they've got a system of being able to network and to know how a hotel runs, how it is operating. They have their own systems where they do their own marketing, and so they really are bringing in a lot of that into the mix when you're talking about a project. On the other end, of course, is the matter of capital, right? And effectively, you've got to be bringing in the money. You've got to be making that investment to say, hey, you want to build a factory, you want to build a hotel, something significant. It means you're going to be bringing in the resources to be able to actually do so. And so those two items are really, really important in that regard. And so when you look back in a lot of the attempts at industrial policy here in St. Lucia, one of the early areas of focus was really with that of the creation of the National Development Corporation. And that was a recommendation coming out of the Canadian government tied to the overall development of the VA4 area. And VA4 was seen as a place of great opportunity in respect of having a lot of available flat land. It's one of the areas where we actually do have a fair bit of flat land. It was 5,000 acres or so of land that was part of the Bean airfield, so it was effectively owned by the state. And so therefore the state had the opportunity to leverage that the land resources in respect of development. And of course, out of that, the idea is that you needed an entity like an NDC, which is now today Invest St. Lucia, rebranded, to be able to encourage and entice investment through this what is now known as an investment promotion entity. And so NDC was born back in the 1970s, effectively to sort of drive that process. But since then, of course, we've seen, and of course, a number of attempts by providing the space through construction of factory shells or providing land for development of hotels, that sort of thing was quite often the case. Now, we now go into this new period where we're talking about quite often public-private partnership. And PPPs come in different forms. Now, the airport, for example, the Hiwanora International Airport was slated to have been developed under a public-private partnership. And there's a process that has to usually go through in respect of creating good PPPs. And why is that important? Because if you're not careful, you can have the system being abused. And just today, in History of Today, we were hearing about this situation in Russia and the coup there. After the collapse of the Soviet Union and the rise of democracy in Russia and capitalism in Russia, it was the rawest form of capitalism, one could say, in that the idea was that the state was being told, hey, you've got these state companies, you've got state assets, you need to divest them, you need to get them sold out, you need to privatize. And so what ended up in that situation is that a lot of the assets of the former Soviet Union, now the Russian Federation, were sold off almost, outright to entities, to companies, individuals, and unfortunately the processes and did not always ensure that these assets were actually really properly valued, and that individuals were therefore getting the sweetest of deals and getting ownership over major aspects of the Russian economy. And so as a result of that, we saw, especially in industry, in hydrocarbons, in oil, we saw the rise of what we now know as the Russian oligarchs, a few individuals and families owning vast wealth in the case of Russia, owning what were formerly state assets. And so you don't want to have that type of situation in respect of attempts at encouraging public-private partnership. PPP, the thinking there is that you have a more controlled environment, a more measured environment in which entities, the private sector, can participate, but they are doing so to the extent that the state will eventually be able to quite often reclaim these assets for themselves. So we can think back, for example, to the matter just after the 1997 general election. The incoming Labour Party government engaged in a number of efforts to improve on the building stock and in capital infrastructure that existed in the country. One of the classic examples of that was about 2 or 3 projects that were done through an entity out of Trinidad and Tobago called NIPDEC, which is the sort of a private arm, or investment arm, I should say, of their National Insurance Board. And that entity was effectively created so as to be an investment arm of the what we call NIC here in St. Lucia. And so they came on because they had this model in place and they were very active in doing so. And they were able to then enter into what were known as bolt agreements with the government of St. Lucia for the construction of things like the Castries car park. That was one of the major projects that they took on, which is now we know as the Castries car park / Conway Business Center. The Ministry of Infrastructure building at Union was also one of those projects that was undertaken through a BOLT agreement. And what is BOLT? What does that mean? It's an acronym that stands for Build, Own, Lease, Transfer. Or sometimes it's really, well, you could also say build, operate, lease, transfer. But the thinking is that an entity comes in, private company comes in, they build, you sign an agreement, and the agreement says that we will build this facility. We will take our own money and we will pump that money into building what you want. And then we will ensure that is properly maintained over a set period of time, during which you will lease the property to that entity, and then you will pay rental fees. So the government would then pay rental fees on a monthly basis back to that entity for the purpose of repayment over a set period of time. And usually it might be 12 or 15 or 20 years, depending on the nature of the project. And at the end of that period of time, the lease comes to an end, and the government has full ownership over what was eventually constructed. So, as in the case of the Ministry of Infrastructure building at Union, which is a pretty large facility, over 35,000 square feet of space, a 3-level structure with, all the parking and other elements that were put into that structure, that modern structure. It is now fully owned by the government of St. Lucia. Likewise, I believe the same obtains with respect to the Castries car park building, which is now fully owned by the National Insurance Corporation through an entity which it itself created, that of NIPRO, to be able to do property management and development, likewise similar to NIPDEC. So those models we know have been around for some time, and they have, one can say, worked fairly smoothly. And in any instance where you have those situations, what is done is that the property, the land in question on which the development is being done, is leased to the developer. It's leased to the developer. And it's leased to the developer at a peppercorn rate. So quite often, if you will see that it is leased to the developer for a $1 a year or $1 for it's usually $1 a year, whatever the case is, for the period of time, so that the developer has certain rights in that regard. Whereas while of course during that period of time, the government is repaying the developer for the investment that it was able to upfront. So that is something that we see quite often in terms of developments. But mind you, that is, as I said, this is in that instance a build-own-lease transfer type of arrangement. And in that instance, what happens is that the developer is not really the one utilizing the property. So it is really the government, the state, that is actually utilizing the property, and so therefore they are making a repayment. Now we come to the situation with respect to that of GPH, because we're hearing quite a lot now about GPH and trying to compare GPH to DSH. And of course, if you just came out of nowhere, GPH being Global Port Holdings, which is an international operator of numerous cruise ports around the world. And they, of course, have been active in looking at PPPs with a number of different ports, cruise ports including in the Caribbean, including that of, I think, San Juan in Puerto Rico. Antigua is also on board with a similar agreement, as well as one of the busiest ports in the Caribbean, that of Nassau in the Bahamas. And they are all now GPH ports. Likewise, St. Lucia is within this category. Now, what occurred within that context of that agreement is that the government is entering into a PPP with an entity, and that entity is going to be making an investment. Is going to be making investments into assets which the government has identified could add value to the touristic offering of the country, and of course in terms of the port development. So in the case of GPH, there were certain things that the entity GPH would take on, including repayment of the loan that SLASPA had for the expansion of the Berth 1 at Point Seraphim to allow for larger vessels. They added on some breasting dolphins, and so that was a loan of over $20 million. So GPH is saying, hey, we will pay that off. We will also add in to that investments such as, which we know now, the promenade, the waterfront promenade, the redevelopment of the vendors arcade, adding on parking there, adding on parking for taxis as well in that Northern Wharf area, redeveloping the Banans Bay area, doing developments in the Soufriere waterfront. So they said, hey, these are the projects that we are going to be actually making the investment in. And in exchange for that, we will in fact take out then, and of course we're going to go on and promote more vessels coming in to the island, because it benefits everybody, it benefits us, it benefits you. And so therefore we will take a share in the revenue stream that you are getting. But for them to do the investments, of course, in these physical places, they are then given a similar lease of holding those properties for the contract period of 30 years. Now, it's pretty different though when you look at the matter of DSH. Because number one, what you have and even in the GPH agreement, as I said, at the end of the 30 years, it gets handed back to the state, and of course the state has the benefit of the enjoyment of the use of it. In fact, it already has the use of it, but it has a full ownership after the 30-year period. In the case of, as with a Bolt agreement, like I said, with the car park, with the Ministry of Infrastructure, after I think maybe 20 years or 15 years, whatever, I can't remember the exact time frame, it goes back to the state. But in the case of when you look at it with GPH, you're talking about a 99-year lease. So very, very different from the normal period that you're speaking about in terms of a Bolt because of or PPP. Normally, concession agreements will be for anywhere between 15 to 30 years, or in that time frame. And the country then enjoys the benefit of owning the assets, which are still within the period of the life cycle of the investment that is made. So when you look at a project which is basically 100 years of ownership, we tend to call these, at least within our frame, legal frame, emphyteutic leases. They are almost effectively ownership of the property, because the length of time that you're speaking about is effectively the lifespan of two buildings, right? You really have it for a period of time where the building, whatever you're building, would completely depreciate, and you would still own it and would have to build again if needs be over a period of time. So you really have it for two building lifetimes, right? Because normally you would consider 50 years as the time frame that you utilize for depreciation of many of those types of assets. And so in a 99-year lease situation, that's a lifetime. That's already you're speaking about 3 to 4 times the length of a typical PPP arrangement. So it's very, very different when we're looking at the situation with respect to GPH. The other thing about the DSH agreement is that it also, not only is it impacting leased lands, it also is impacting other lands which the entity could decide to purchase at any time. So it really locks in the state in this regard. And then you would then have to ask yourself about the entire situation with respect to DSH. You entering into this agreement, you yourself have now had to take on significant investments. So the very same thing that you try to avoid in respect of these PPPs, the idea is that the government does not have to put out significant capital for a PPP. The developer is the one that is taking on the burden and the responsibility of putting out the capital, or is relieving you, and so providing you with an opportunity to save and to have greater fiscal space and maneuverability. But in the case of DSH, what did we see happen? We saw that the country ended up having to take on a tremendous amount of expense in terms of having to construct a bypass road to facilitate the realignment of the Larry Shoes Highway, to facilitate the orientation of the track that was desired by Mr. Teo Aking, although that was not within the original proposal. But in this iteration, which eventually was built, that was what was required. And so the government had to spend close to $15 million in terms of taking on that expense. Then on top of that, of course, we saw the fact that we had a tremendous investment in a national meat processing facility down at Beauséjour in Vieux-Fort, and over $24 million grant funding from the Taiwanese government. And to date, we can't see one culled pig or goat or sheep or anything coming out of that facility. And because there is this agreement in place which effectively bars the use of that facility by the state under this current situation. So after spending over $20 million on the facility. It cannot be used. So then the government had to find monies to relocate the Beausejour Agricultural Station, and that was sent to Volette in Micoud. And then even when we saw the advent of an event coming out of, after spending the monies on constructing this race course, the government then had to subsidize even the race days, putting on the actual opening ceremony for, on the inaugural race day, being financed by the state. And then the other event, I think there were only two ever really coming out of that. And so at the end of it all, we are still in a situation where we were promised a race facility that was going to be bringing in planes upon planes of wealthy individuals flying in to see the races, and we were promised races every day. We were promised over 400 thoroughbred horses, which were going to be, at the facility, and it has effectively come to naught. And the reality is, it's still owned by DSH. It's not a state property, and to the extent that, of course, people are saying, hey, there's this wonderful facility. Early on today, somebody was saying that they didn't understand why the local equine association and the people who race horses, why were they going to the Kakabef to race? And it didn't make any sense. But it is because these individuals, this association, does not have access to the DSH race course. They don't have rights to the DSH race course. There's nothing that gives them the opportunity to utilize the facility. So it is really sitting down there as a dead horse. And unfortunately, there is still this abeyance in terms of uncertainty as to how this is all going to pan out. Because here you have a tremendous amount of very, very valuable flat land in the south of the island being taken up. And then in addition to the land where you have the actual race course, you have a lot of other lands being tied up as part of the framework agreement, which has effectively tied the development of VA4 tremendously. And so it's still a huge elephant in the room. It's a white elephant. It's a dead horse. It is the elephant in the room that's preventing a lot of development in the south of the island. So it is a very strange, well, it's not so strange that, of course, the leader of the opposition is trying to equalize and compare GPH with DSH, because, that's how politics is, right? You've got to try to, if you're down a couple points, you need to try to pull down your opponent a couple points too, to at least get to the same frame. And so we can see the attempts at the narrative there. But it is a very, very different agreement in this regard. But like I said, in the case of GPH, it really is pretty standard business when it comes to the peppercorn rates for leases under PPPs. You do get those types of arrangements. It's almost a standard practice for most PPPs, whether it's a bolt, whether it's a concession agreement. And of course, no doubt we'll have to continue looking at it. I think what is important, however, moving forward with respect to PPPs, public-private partnerships, is that I believe that there's a need for a legislative framework to be able to deal with PPPs, right? And how PPPs are dealt with by any government that comes in place. Because it is a reality that we are going to face. We must have PPPs, public-private partnerships, to be able to make the kind of investments that we will have to make in the future. There is simply just not the generosity that you find coming out of countries like before. This is not the 1960s and 70s where there are countries willing to give small island developing states large amounts of grants. That's not going to be happening. And so you do have to find a model to be able to modernize a number of areas of infrastructural requirements. And so PPPs are here to stay. But what we need to certainly ensure is that there are safeguards as to the extent to which these PPPs can go, and also to ensure, of course, that there is parliamentary oversight into the matter of PPPs. So similar like in the case of the Hiwanora International Airport, there was in fact legislation that was brought forward to be able to effect that 30-year PPP. And I think we have to be mindful that we never know what can happen. We may have a government that may decide that they may want to privatize healthcare. They may want to privatize hospitals. And should that be something that is simply left up to the decision of the executive, or should it really have parliamentary oversight? Should it have at least the benefit of public disclosure when it comes to the terms of the agreements? So I think the need for PPP legislation to provide cover as to how those agreements should be crafted and what can in fact be placed through a PPP, I think that is a very important conversation that the country needs to have, and to ensure that we can protect ourselves in the future as well. That's our dish of the day. When we come back, we'll take in our weather report and then head to the phone lines.
This has been The Daily Dish.
Girl, I've been so stressed searching for the perfect tiles to complete my home.
Really?
Yeah, it's always the same white, beige, and gray tiles with the tile stores. Like they're all buying from the same place. You're the design expert. Help me, please. I'm fed up.
What are you looking for?
Something different. Something that says Caribbean beauty and suits my personality. Something vibrant and classy with a little razzle dazzle.
Okay, Ms. Razzle Dazzle, I know just the place. Island Style Tile and Bath, they're my number one store for everything tile. And with their new In Living Color collection, you'll find the most gorgeous styles to give you that splash of Caribbean flair you're looking for.
That sounds perfect.
I'll even take you myself and throw in a free design consultation.
I'll never say no to that, sis. I can't afford you anyway.
Visit our Island Style showrooms in Castries, Rodney Bay, and Viewfort, or call 450-452 or 453 Tile. We'll help bring your vision to life in living color.
And now it's time for our weather report, brought to you by Island Style.
This is Radio Caribbean International. It's now time for the weather news.
The forecast for St. Lucia valid for the next 24 hours. Winds will be blowing from between east, northeast, and east near 20 miles per hour or 31 kilometers per hour. Weather partly cloudy and hazy, becoming cloudy at times with some scattered showers and a chance of isolated thunderstorms. The forecast for the Lesser Antilles: partly cloudy, hazy at times, becoming cloudy, hazy and becoming cloudy at times, with widely scattered showers and isolated thunderstorms. Your tropical weather outlook: an approaching tropical wave is bringing cloudiness, moisture, and unstable conditions with scattered showers and isolated thunderstorms over the region during the next 24 hours. This wave is currently east of the Lesser Antilles, moving westward at 17 miles per hour or 28 kilometers per hour. There is a high potential of it developing into a short-lived tropical depression this weekend as it nears or passes north of the northern Leeward Islands. Additionally, another tropical wave over the eastern tropical Atlantic is moving westward at 12 miles per hour or 19 kilometers per hour, with a minimum chance of development over the next couple of days. And that was your RCI Weather Report, brought to you by Island Style.
This has been RCI's Weather News. For more information, call the Weather Hotline at 454-3452. RCI 101 number 1.
Girl, I've been so stressed searching for the perfect tiles to complete my home.
Really?
Yeah, it's always the same white, beige, and gray tiles with the style stores. Like they're all buying from the same place. You're the design expert. Help me, please. I'm fed up.
What are you looking for?
Something different. Something that says Caribbean beauty and suits my personality. Something vibrant and classy with a little razzle dazzle.
Okay, Ms. Razzle Dazzle, I know just the place. Island Style Tile and Bath, they're my number one store for everything tile. And with their new In Living Color collection, you'll find the most gorgeous styles to give you that splash of Caribbean flair you're looking for.
That sounds perfect.
I'll even take you myself and throw in a free design consultation.
I'll never say no to that, sis. I can't afford you anyway.
Visit our Island Style showrooms in Castries, Rodney Bay, and Vieux Fort, or call 450-452 or 453 Tile. Will help bring your vision to life in living color.
And welcome back to the lunchroom here at Radio Caribbean International. Of course, the number to call to tell us what's on your plate today, it is 4523046. Again, 4523046. Now, I have to say though that would be nice if when entities and surrogates are coming up with posts, that they should be a little bit more responsible with what they are putting out there, because some of the posts that we're seeing are just simply rather unfortunate. And one which I've just noticed, which has come to light, which is actually dated from August the 6th of 2025, is on the whole matter of the visa overstay rate. And it was posted by United Pac St. Lucia, which has been a very ardent surrogate page of the United Workers' Party. And it reads as follows. The headline: St. Lucia's U.S. visa overstay rate highlights deepening economic crisis. And then it says Philip J. Pierre blamed as record 26.6%. St. Lucia U.S. visa overstay rate sparks outrage. And the story goes on. St. Lucia U.S. visa overstay rate has soared to 26.6% in fiscal year 2023, nearly 43 times the visa waiver program average of 0.62%, marking one of the highest rates among participating nations. The alarming figure underscores a wave of non-compliance that critics say reflect deep economic desperation under Prime Minister Philip J. Pierre's SLP government. And it says, in stark contrast, during fiscal year 2017 to 2018, St. Lucia's visa overstay rate for US B1, B2 tourist and business visas stood at 2.2%, ranking 10th highest among Caribbean nations. Serious but far from crisis levels. The surge to 26.6% in just a few years points to what analysts describe as structural economic decline and a government failing to retain its citizens. Now, of course, listeners to the lunchroom would have known that we, when this whole matter of the whole suggestion that the U.S. was pushing for a visa bond of between $5,000 to $15,000, and one of the rationales was that regarding high overstay rates, we actually went and got the report. Right, that was the entry-exit overstay report for fiscal year 2023, report to Congress from the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, Homeland Security, right? And that was coming from U.S. Customs and Border Protection to Congress, and we gave the details coming out of that very same report for the fiscal year 2023. And I cannot understand it is, but just to say that just a blatant lie regarding the whole matter of 26.6%, because you go down to page 15 where it speaks to the financial year 2023 non-visa waiver program country B1, B2 overstay rates. And you go down the list on page 15 of that report. It's a 57-page report. And St. Lucia is there. And the visa overstay rate is 1.83%. 1.83%. So out of the 13,442 St. Lucians who were supposed to depart from the United States because they had entered, and so therefore they had to depart. They entered on a visa. 264 of those 13,442 overstayed, right? And that gives you, and of that number, when they looked at the data into 2024, it came down from 264 to 246. So some overstayed, but then they still left. So there's that slight, very, very slight change. And the rate is effectively still 1.83%, under 2%. So here, this article by United Pac is blatantly suggesting a figure of 26.6%. I have no idea which report or what source that they are using to come up with that figure. And but this is what they're putting out there. And they're saying that St. Lucia is at a point of economic crisis, and so this is why effectively nearly 1 in 4 St. Lucians are overstaying their visas, which is completely not true. And so I'm not sure why there would be a desire to so blatantly skew reality and to bring these false figures forward when it's pretty easily fact-checked, and to go out there. But of course, you see again the impression that they desire to create is that there is some deep crisis. But it's also ironic because they're quoting the 2017-2018 figures, which was of course deliberate because this was the time when the United Workers' Party was in power, and pointing out that it was 2.2%, so it actually has come down a little bit. Our visa overstay rate seems to have improved in the year 2023. It hasn't gotten worse, and it certainly is nowhere near 26.6%. So again, I think we are at a point where, I know there's a lot of misinformation and individuals are deliberately trying to skew certain things, but I think they're not even making it remotely real. I don't know how we can deal with that kind of thing, except to say that it is really important that we do have to deal with a level of fact-checking. But you would like to believe, of course, that there'd be more responsible actions coming out of entities like these, because it's a very, very well-known United Workers' Party mouthpiece. So, again, just to make the point that St. Lucia's visa overstay rate, at least from what we can see here from the report that was cited in that U.S. State Department message on the whole issue of implementation of visa bonds on countries, that in fact there is a pretty reasonable visa overstay rate in the case of St. Lucia. Certainly, I can also point out that there are a number of other countries within the Caribbean that have higher visa overstay rates. The likes of Jamaica, for example, is 5.11% during that same financial year 2023 period. Guyana, 5.39%. So pretty high there. And even countries like Colombia have higher visa overstay rates, 4.21%. In fact, Chile, right, which is a pretty well-to-do country within South America, it has a higher visa overstay rate of 2.3%. Even Spain, which in fact has a visa waiver program, has a higher visa overstay rate than St. Lucia at 2.16%. So again, it is one of those situations, no doubt, where we're seeing a lot of attempts to skew reality. And it's unfortunate, of course, because we know that sometimes these things are listened to and they are believed by individuals who sometimes just take it at face value. And I think it is, but something good should certainly tell you something would be amiss if St. Lucia just all of a sudden had 1 in 4 of the persons traveling to the U.S. just didn't come back. That would certainly be alarming, I would say, and of course highly, highly unrealistic. But this is the kind of stuff that I suppose we're going to be seeing out there. A lot of it is very deliberately trying to create this belief that there is a significant crisis in regards to relations with the United States of America. Of course, we do know that we are seeing a very tenuous situation overall in terms of the U.S. posture towards matters like the Cuban medical mission program. We've spoken about that, for example. We've seen the impacts coming out of countries like Grenada. And in some instances, I think a minister over there has already lost their U.S. visa because he openly in fact said that he'd prefer to stand with Cuba than to, have to make any changes with respect to that Cuban medical mission. And we've spoken about that. But I don't think that it certainly helps if we are going to be trying to create this sort of this image of our country that is clearly so negative that and that it's the sky is falling kind of a situation at this point in time, right? That everything is coming down, everything is collapsing, and so therefore I suppose the logical outcome that would be desired is that there has to be some sort of political change. That would, of course, be the wish of the opposition. Now, again, just to come back to the point regarding the what is being circulated, again, which is that whole issue of the land registration. As I said, it is pretty much standard practice when you come to the matter of PPPs, whether it's a bolt, whether it's a concession agreement, where the land that the development is happening on is leased to the developer or the private entity for the period of time that the concession is for. So, and that, of course, simply gives some level of allowance so that the developer can, in fact, go ahead and make the investment, because they're the ones who actually have to go out and go through the entire process of the planning approvals. They're the ones who have to maintain the facility during the period of time. And so they therefore have to have a lease. And so the idea is that, hey, you want me to come in and spend X million dollars on this property. I need to have the ability to have, control over the property for that period of time. And so that effectively is what is done in pretty much any instance when you have a concession agreement. The big difference, as I said, is that it is not for the total enjoyment of the developer. The developer is actually, at the end of the day, once the facility is Like, let's say, for example, in the case of the vendor's arcade, it still will be operated for all intents and purposes by the Castries Constituency Council once it has been upgraded. So it is not a situation where they, in fact, have real ownership of that type of property. When you're dealing with a 99-year lease, however, effectively like an emphyteutic lease, it's a very different situation there. That's effective ownership that you are providing to that entity for that period of time. So effectively, you will never get enjoyment of use in your lifetime and our lifetime, and probably even the lifetime of our children. We won't get enjoyment of use. And that's where the difference lies significantly between what you see with respect to GPH and what exists with respect to that of the DSH agreement. We'll definitely be touching on some of that tomorrow again. Also, just want to make mention that St. Lucia's Carifesta team is off, and they are going to be representing us over in Barbados as part of Carifesta, the Carifesta events over there. And we've got a lot of different performers in the areas of music, dance, literary arts, theater. The play by McDonald Dixon, Kesno, is going to be put on there with a cast of 9. There'll be street theater. The Youth and Arts Theater Company is going around to do masquerade. There'll be ballet by members of the PI community. We're seeing fine art, 10 pieces by master visual artist Ken Lawrence. The film Shantae's World by Marthrine Emmanuel is going to be also aired, as well as Dale Elliott's 21 Days. And there you have literary arts performances as well, spoken word by Eileen Nelson and Shine Savory, as well as by novelist McDonald Dixon. And of course, as well, music, Augustine Jab Duplessis, Pure Jazz by Richard Payne. We have folk ambassadors, Dyson Imbe. He'll be leading musicians with folk and contemporary music, percussion through Lapo Cabwit and Genesis drummers, Teddyson John and Arthur Ale, bringing some soca flair to the mix as well. Helen folk dancers are part of the team, PI dancers. Quite a Silver Shadow Dance Academy is going to be in as well in the dance domain. So quite a large contingent heading across to Barbados as part of Carifesta 15, which is happening between the 22nd and 30th of August. So we do wish them very, very well and hope that it is a tremendous success in terms of their representation of St. Lucia. That's our program for today, and we do hope that you can join us again tomorrow for another one. I'm your host, Calix George Jr., saying goodbye.
#1 FM.
This summer, it's time for the big clean escape with Sapolio. With Sapolio, you don't just shop, clean, cruise. You win too. Just spend $15 or more on any Sapolio products from July 1st to August 31st, and you're in to win a Dream Caribbean Cruise Escape for 2 and other amazing prizes. Sparkle up your home and maybe even sail away while you're at it. Shop Sapolio today and let the clean take you places. Available at Massey Stores, supermarkets, and other major retail outlets island-wide. Don't wait. The big clean escape is calling.
I'm feeling for something special, something good, something tasty, something smooth. When I think about all the flavors I can savor, I
you have a flavor that makes me glad. But the way I feel, it must be Farron's ice cream. Chocolate coated ice cream bars, cream sippers, I gotta have. Miss some fat-free yogurt, I need
Farron's ice cream.
Farron's ice cream.
It's so delicious. Farron's ice cream.
Farron's
Tastes so good. Farron's ice cream. Oh, I gotta have it. That's only the best will do.
Farron's ice cream, bringing back delicious memories.
The future of communication is here. Say hello to eSIM and Digicel. Use your Digicel number without a physical SIM card in your phone, and your data, minutes, and SMS all there. eSIM works with prepaid and postpaid. Activate more than one eSIM on the same device